What's up? What's up? Welcome to another episode of Hip to the Games. And after a stretch of song breakdowns, and as the NBA's All-Star break is kind of coming to a close here, I wanted to take some time to discuss a few recent topics that I've kind of missed over the past couple weeks, which includes Killer Mike's Grammy sweep, the NBA trade deadline winners, in my opinion, and whether or not the Golden State Warriors might be ready for a play-in or even a playoff push. And of course, ending today's episode with another installment of the Dog of the Week. Been a minute since the last one, so I'm excited to reveal that as well. So, definitely some fun topics today as I finally get back on the basketball side of things. But either way, it's time to kick back, relax, and get ready for the fun to come on H2DG. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast, it's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip hop, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the latest episode of Hip to the Games. Of course, if you happen to be new here, welcome aboard. I'm happy to have you here. And as always, if you are a loyal listener, I want to say welcome back and thank you for your continued support. It truly does mean a lot to me. Of course, before we get into today's episode, though, I got to get my shout outs out the way. The first one always going to the creative director, Jesus Christ, for another H2DG episode, as it's always a blessing to get in front of this microphone and execute this dope idea he's given me and take the creative path that he's led me on. And the second one goes to my 19 Media Group family for the opportunity to represent the home team. As always, be sure to follow 19M Group on Twitter, 19 Media Group on Instagram and YouTube to follow everything going on with the network, especially since your boy's been on video, starting his video journey as of late. So you definitely want to subscribe to the YouTube so you don't miss that. We do have a variety of shows around sports, music, and culture hosted by some hardworking independent podcasters, and I'm sure you can find another teammate of mine to support as well. So whether it's likes, comments, reposts, listens, I mean, all of it matters, and any kind of support is appreciated and felt on that end. Now, with all our pregame stuff out the way, you know we got to go right ahead and tip today's episode off with the format that pays homage to the classic hip hop strong structure. All right. So I got three verses, or in this case, three topics for the show. The first one that always sets the tone, the middle one bringing the climax or the rising action, and the last one is always the haymaker, right? You always got to have your best verse for last. So we got the best of the best at the last one. And so since we got to start with a bang here, starting with verse one, I felt like it was only right to reflect on the recent triumphant night that Killer Mike had at the Grammys. So yes, in the recent days, the Grammys took place, and as always, the night had its usual share of mixed reviews, right? That's kind of expected come Grammy night. And one of those being the way casual fans seem to be very surprised at Killer Mike's rap album of the year victory. In fact, some people even claim to not know who he was, which I think is just ridiculous, right? And very disrespectful, if you ask me. Sure, I get it, right? Like we have our favorites, and we don't listen to everybody, right? When the Grammys come around, we didn't catch everybody's album, we didn't catch everybody's song, we didn't catch everybody's music video and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think the key is to remember that no matter how you feel about the Grammys, it's a prestigious award at the end of the day, and to earn one is quite the honor. So I'll actually share a little bit more on that exact kind of idea later. But if you once again remember my appearance on the Music Buds, I shared just how excited I was for Killer Mike because he seemed to have a real chance at winning the award. And why did I feel that way? Because despite his competition being hotter or more popular artists, quality wise, I felt he was light years ahead of that competition. And to me, that's what the Grammys should be all about. Again, they haven't always been consistent with that. They're equally prestigious and inconsistent with their selections. But I will say, fresh off a year, we celebrated 50 years of hip hop. They didn't get everything right, but it was nice to see that they did get this award right because boy, did Killer Mike, or should I say Michael Render, put every part of his heart and soul into his album, Michael. From top to bottom, I really appreciated the way he never shied away from detailing his experiences, and including themes and lessons from his family members. In particular, two important women in his life, his mom and his grandmom. Like, I've said it before, man. It was just a great collection of pro-black ghetto gospel and just straight up hip hop all in one. So when Killer Mike won Best Rap Album, it was almost like my homie won because we know how the Grammys be, right? But in my eyes, you know, her loss wasn't even close to the quality Mike brought on Michael. Nas King Disease 3, that was enjoyable, but really, I felt like it was just him having fun rapping, right? Which is great. It's been great. It's been great to see Nas get his bars off the way he has with Hit Boy and everything that they've dropped over the last couple of years. But I just felt like, okay, like it was great, but is it Grammy worthy? I'm not sure. And then, Metro Boomin is one of the hottest producers of the modern era. So it was cool to see him represent the producers, but I still didn't necessarily get the impression that it could compete with Michael. And then arguably what I've seen as the biggest snub of the group was Travis Scott's Utopia. Now, I won't lie, Travis Scott is an artist I just never really got into. Like in my eyes, he's more of a rock star as opposed to a hip hop artist or a rap artist. Obviously, he does some rapping. Obviously, he plays with different sounds and whatnot. But again, he's just one of those guys. I see him as an artist. So for him to walk away with best rap album didn't necessarily, yeah, I feel like it didn't necessarily align. Um, so I wasn't surprised, you know, by the competition and everything like that. So when Mike won, it was dope for me. Um, I just think it was a lot of different styles, but the funny thing is I wasn't surprised that Mike won as much as I was surprised that the Grammys came to their senses for once, right? And furthermore, the craziest part was knowing that Killer Mike didn't just walk away with best rap album, but he also won best rap song and best rap performance, both for scientists and engineers off that album, which that song featured artists like Future, of course, Andre 3000, and Aaron Allen Kane. Both of those wins surprised me. It seemed like the easy choice was to pick Lil Uzi Vert's "Just Wanna Rock," right? That song was blowing up everywhere. In my eyes, that was the best rap song simply because that song was everywhere and it felt like the entire world was swinging their hips to that song the way everybody's been able to do with that song and on TikTok and everything. Uh, it is a very short song though, which makes sense why the Grammys went another direction in their decision. And additionally, you would think they'd probably pick Drake and 21 Savage's Rich Flex because why not? Right? It's Drake and 21 Savage. Like everybody's posting on their IG story, everybody's posting on TikTok, people are doing reels to it. Like it's just a hype song. Why wouldn't that win? Um, and then, I even want to give Doja Cat her credit because, you know, I'm not surprised she lost, but like it was pretty cool to see her get a nominee, if I'm being honest. Because I think the way she's flipped from pop to what I think is her real love in hip hop, I think which surprised fans that were out of touch with her hip hop roots, as a dancer. She has videos of her as a dancer and how she even cited like Little Brother as one of her favorites coming up. So I really do feel and it didn't surprise me when she stopped the pop stuff and said like, yo, like it's time for me to do what I really want to do. And all her fans were like, "Oh, Doja, what are you doing? Uh you got a gold mine with the pop stuff like hip hop, rap, like what are you doing?" But like if you actually take the time to listen to her, whether you like her or not, if you actually take the time to listen, it seems like she just has this natural passion and love for hip hop. And I think it comes through in her music. So it was dope to see her get a little shine on there as for a nominee. Um, but see, if we flip to best rap performance, not only were Drake and 21 up for that as well, but this time Mike's competition was Kendrick Lamar and Baby Keem, right? We know when they get together, it's darn near like it's like, I don't know, Steph and Clay in their prime, like, and even going against the great Black Thought. who made Love Letter, which was essentially an ode to hip hop. I'm not gonna lie, I really thought that had a chance at winning simply because of that. So my point is here is that Killer Mike Def had his share of competition, and that makes his sweep even more impressive. So, I feel like, again, despite mixed reviews, I do think hip hop fans can kind of breathe a sigh of relief knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the Grammys do get it right. All right. But at the same time, where does all this angst come from? And I think for starters, we can go back to 1989, where DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince publicly chose to boycott the Grammys, even after they won Best Rap Performance for Parents Just Don't Understand, because their presentation wasn't televised. The Fresh Prince, or Will Smith, as you might know him as, even said that it simply showed how little the Grammys cared about hip hop. So soon after that, many hip hop artists like Salt and Pepper, LL Cool J, later on, Eminem was very vocal about boycotting the Grammys. It makes sense that that kind of took place, right? Like if you don't, I think Salt and Pepper said something along these lines, like if you don't respect us, we're not going to respect you. If you're not going to acknowledge us, then we're going to act like you don't even exist. And if you don't see our art as such, if you don't see that what we do is music also, then why should we even show up? And unfortunately, it's been quite a lengthy growing pain in these 50 years of hip hop. That said, I do think that's why it was equally so dope to see Killer Mike win, because that's another thing we can put on hip hop's history books. But I do see both sides, right? Like there's the crowd that's happy for Killer Mike, but then there's the other crowd that thinks his celebratory acceptance speech is counterproductive, for lack of a better term. I saw tweets along the lines of, "Oh, look at Killer Mike celebrating in front of the same audience that disrespects hip hop," or "Oh, Killer Mike, he's falling in that trap again. Now he's gonna make radio hits, and we're not gonna hear nothing like Michael again." Like I say, I do see both sides, and again, you see why Jay Z wins the Global Impact Award, and yet one of the things he says is how his wife Beyonce has the most nominations for a woman, and yet has never won Album of the Year. So it's like, why push to be accepted by a group in the Grammys who always gives us the short end of the stick? It's that hard truth that no matter how famous you are, no matter how hardworking and passionate and accomplished you may be, as a black person, you still get the short end of the stick. Like, yes, even Beyonce, even all these other artists can get the short end of the stick. That's just the sad reality. And and at that same time, in my eyes, I think that's why we should genuinely celebrate our wins, though. It bothered me to see how upset people were that Killer Mike was happy that he won, as if he isn't human, as if that same little boy on his album cover didn't dream of this kind of success, as if when Biggie said never thought that hip hop would take it this far, that this idea could exclude the Grammys. When you work hard and are in a competitive field, especially in music where it's so hard to get noticed, build a core fan base and make money that can actually support your livelihood, these kinds of awards can be a nice result of that. There should be no shame in celebrating that. I can never be mad at someone celebrating the fruits of their labor, especially for the emotional album that this was for Killer Mike. So, yes, can the Grammys improve? Absolutely. But can we also celebrate our wins? You darn right. You darn right we're going to celebrate our wins. These people work too hard not to. So again, if we're still going to get snubbed the way we do, that means we got to celebrate not just our own, but each other's wins even harder. So big shout out to Killer Mike on his well-deserved Grammys. Like I said, very excited for him, and just a dope album. If you haven't listened to it, you definitely got to give Michael a tune in, because a lot of people slept on him, but like I said, from top to bottom, man, it's just an enjoyable, heartfelt album, and it makes sense why he won the Grammy, all the Grammys that he won. So, no matter how big or small you think it is, it's just good to see hip hop tally a W in a space that hasn't tallied many W's for us. So, that's what I have to say about that. But enough Grammy talk. As it's time to get back into hoops for verse two and talk about two teams that I believe won the trade deadline. But before we get into that, I know Valentine's Day is past us, but obviously we should be showing love 365 days in the year. And if you love hip hop and basketball and love hip to the games, here's how you can show your love. As a fan of Hip to the Games, not only should you show your love for the podcast, but you gotta express your love for basketball and hip hop. With a wide variety of clothing and accessories, there is always a way to show how much the game of basketball and the game of rap means to you. Let everybody know what it means to be hip to the games by clicking the link in the episode's description to cop some merch and represent the H2DG lifestyle. So about 2 weeks ago now, the NBA trade deadline took place, and it featured some pretty nice moves. I think nothing crazy, right? It wasn't like the Kevin Durant and Kyrie trade rumors of the past year, but there were some, some teams went to work. For example, it was good to see a guy like Gordon Hayward get traded to a team like OKC, who is looking like a conference finals threat, if you ask me, and could use a veteran like him, who can still contribute despite some bad injury history. Gordon Hayward this year, yeah, he struggled with his injuries, but the last few years, he's still a very solid all-around guard. 14, 4 and 4 averages, can still shoot the ball. Like he's a good player. And teams, he was one of those guys where I knew I'm like, if he goes to a contender, like he can help them out. And it's dope to see him go to a team like OKC, who already has such great chemistry and such great unselfishness with the basketball. Gordon Hayward's gonna fit like a glove over there. And then you have like the Sixers, right? Who acquired a sharpshooter in Buddy Hield, a guy that's going to get even more open looks as Joel Embiid and the emergence of Tyrese Maxey now will be sure to draw some traps and double teams, and they'll be able to kick it out to Buddy for some threes. But I think two teams that I felt really did a good job were the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks. Starting with the New York Knicks, they were able to get former Raptor and defensive specialist OG Anunoby as an appetizer to the trade deadline, right? That happened a few weeks beforehand. But his scrappy impact on defense and capable scoring ability quickly elevated the Knicks into quite the contender out east, especially when you consider the way Jalen Brunson's been balling and Julius Randle has been balling before the injury. But now you take that trade and now you go to the deadline and you make a deal with the Detroit Pistons that sends Malachi Flynn, Evan Fournier, Ryan Arcidiacono, and Quentin Grimes in exchange for the return of Alec Burks and sharpshooting veteran Bojan Bogdanovic. One of the better, hotter trade targets all season. They beef up their rotation and bring in guys that can knock down shots and make up for some of the scoring, especially now. They'll be able to make up for some of that scoring that they lost in Julius Randle, before his shoulder injury happened. But Alec Burks is a guy that became one of the more beloved Knicks in recent memory, as his 2 seasons from 2020 to 2022 featured his ability to knock down threes and create opportunities for himself and others with drives to the rim. But the bigger news is that they brought in Bojan Bogdanovic, a guy who's proven to be a sharpshooter from deep, most notably with his postseason experience during his time in Indiana and Utah. And even, his shorter time in Detroit, he's turned into a 20-point per game scorer, even as he approaches his mid 30s. Obviously, I don't think he's going to average 20 in a Knick uniform, but at the same time, he's definitely going to bring what he's brought in Utah. A guy that is just an underrated bucket getter. Boyan, if you pay attention, he's not just a sharp shooter. He's got some post fadeaway game in him. He's not afraid to put the ball on the floor on occasion. Like this dude knows how to get buckets. He's just one of those guys where it's like he may not look like he know how to get buckets, but when he is torching you out there, he makes it known that like, yeah, like you can't stop me. Like that dude knows how to have and keep a hot hand on him. So, the fact that the Knicks got that kind of guy on their roster now is just like, come on. Like, they were already balling, they're top four in the East. Getting a guy like that is just going to help them tremendously, especially when they get fully healthy. And when you look at this trade, like the Knicks basically flipped a lot of their role players, most of whom were getting limited minutes, into a guy that can be a key rotational piece off the bench, right? Just like he was a couple years ago in Alec Burks. And then you get another 20-point per game scorer who could start on most NBA teams right now. So considering they're healthy during the playoffs, they have the chance to play a rotation of all-stars in Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle. Then you got Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Isaiah Hartenstein, right, who stepped up big as a physical presence inside. Dante DiVincenzo, like a guy that's gonna be a nice 3-and-D guy, but can do some ball handling and some playmaking. Like I said, Bojan Bogdanovic, Alec Burks, Precious Achua. This is another guy, high energy big man, a lot like Isaiah Hartenstein, can set good screens, catch lobs, do the dirty work on the glass. Like especially with Mitchell Robinson being injured this season, like they need those kind of guys to play that scrappy, reliable New York Knicks basketball, right? That's the kind of basketball the New York Knicks should play and have been known to play over the decades of their existence, and I don't know if it will all be Eastern Conference Finals good, but the way they've balled out this year, man, they could get close. They could get close. I know Cleveland's hot right now. They're on fire right now. Boston is the best team in the league record wise right now. I don't know if they'll make the conference finals, but you better believe, you cannot sleep on what the Knicks just did in the trade deadline. And, you know, I'm curious to see what that's going to look like when Julius Randle gets back into form because they have a really nice group, and I think, like I said, it's a lot of core guys that fit together. It's not a bunch of random basketball with this team. Like they have some talent over there. Like my thing is always. When it comes playoff time, you kind of worry is Julius Randle going to succumb to the double teams again? He becomes easy to double team. They take him out the game, and then Jalen Brunson's forced to do a lot of the work offensively. So I'm excited to see what they look like healthy, and if that's something they can overcome this year. So that will be the key for the New York Knicks moving forward. But yeah, I do see the New York Knicks as winners in this year's trade deadline, because they flipped a lot of their role players for some guys that can definitely contribute in a heartbeat. So shout out to the New York Knicks for figuring it out, doing their thing. I know Knick fans, the most passionate fans in the league, right up there probably with the Lakers and Phillies up there as well. I know they have some high expectations for their team, and I'm sure they like the moves that they made, and now it's time to get into high gear and see how it works come playoff time. But alongside them, I also had the Dallas Mavericks as winners, because I think we have to remember that this is the same group of guys that started out red hot this season. Like they were towards the top of the standings very early on. And that was pretty much with one big man in the rotation in center, rookie center Derek Lively. And then, after a terrible post trade deadline this year, or excuse me, last year, I think that this year they might have the chance to do the opposite. Led by the dynamic duo of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. The Mavs, they play a ton of pick and roll and isolation basketball with those two guys. They're not afraid, Coach Kidd over there, he's not afraid to let their stars cook and find shooters and cutters in the process. Tim Hardaway Jr. is having a nice year this year. He's looking like a six-man threat. He's averaging almost 18 a game scoring wise, but outside of those guys, nobody else is really averaging double-digit points. I mean, sure, there are guys that are close, with like 9 a game, but it's kind of funny to look at their team and it's like, well, it's pretty much all Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You'll get occasional Tim Hardaway explosiveness, and then Derek Lively's going to catch some lobs, but that's really it. Um, and I think again, that's not disrespect to their role players. Sure, guys like Josh Green, Grant Williams, Derrick Jones Jr. has been really good over there. Maxi Kleber, Dante Exum. How about him, man? Like in some of the games this year where he's kind of had a reemergence. A guy that was a top 5 pick in his draft class. He was getting the Foot Locker commercials. He was such a hot commodity early on, and then kind of struggled with the injuries, didn't really find his place in the league. And here he is on a team, playoff team in Dallas, making really nice contributions. So, they have some decent role players, but I think much of that work goes through Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and a formula that hasn't always gone well for Dallas. Again. They've had some playoff success. They've made the Western Conference Finals, but again, they got swept in the Western Conference Finals. When it was time to face Golden State, they got swept. Luka Doncic is a goon, and he's going to take you very far. I've said this on the pod many episodes ago in my early stages. With the GOAT episode where I was just uh giving my thoughts on the GOAT conversation. But I mentioned that Luka Doncic has that LeBron effect where I can rally my team. My team is going to go as far as I take them, and he has that similar kind of gravity, and that's why they're so good because Luka Doncic is such a great player. But I think especially this year, it was time for Dallas to start saying, okay, how can we get some guys that are going to contribute in greater ways to where it makes it easy for Luka, it makes it easy for Kyrie, but it's like we can actually get more involvement from other guys in the game. And I think that's what they did this trade deadline. They trade their stretch four in Grant Williams for another stretch four in PJ Washington, and they trade big man Rashawn Holmes for Daniel Gafford. The Mavericks acquired some guys to fill in some holes that they had because, PJ Washington, I always seen him as like a Marcus Morris without the mid post game. Like Marcus Morris has old school, back to the basket mid post tendencies, right? He's when he's good and when he's healthy, he can make a lot of tough buckets. He can make a lot of good shots for his team. He can get streaky. I feel like PJ Washington is the same way. Like he can start, he can come off the bench. In the recent weeks, he had a 42-point outing. He's done that before. He can explode from 3-point line. He can score. Like that's what he does. He's the epitome of just a stretch forward. Small ball, power forward in this era. And I think the Mavs needed a guy like that, right? Like you have Grant Williams, who's averaging single digit points, but now you bring in Washington, who's, going to get you 13 to 15 points. He's going to actively look for his shot. Much better than Grant Williams single digits. And although I'm sure they'll miss Grant Williams' physical defensive presence, they're going to be happy that, they got the offensive contributions that PJ Washington is going to bring to this team. Um, and I think, Kyrie and Luka are going to be looking forward to having that kind of scoring help that they never really had before on this team. And then, as I moved to Daniel Gafford, that was a guy who was kind of, he's chilling over there in Washington, right? If you look at him, um, nobody's really looking at Washington. They're one of the worst teams in the league. Like you're going to miss the value he brings, and even me, right? Hey, Chicago Bulls fans, that's another guy that we didn't really use right and is gonna thrive somewhere else, right? Like even already in his Mavericks debut, dude had like what 19 points, 9 rebounds in like 17 minutes, in a blowout win. So like his energy is gonna, man, I love that they got his energy. A young big man, reliable rebounder, reliable rim protector, right? Like somebody that's going to be used very similar to Derek Lively. So, right, they have some big man depth now. And it shouldn't get lost that Daniel Gafford is averaging a career high 2.1 blocks per game at the time of this recording. So, you know, I really think he's going to be able to step up and they're going to just have nice flexibility down low, getting some big man depth. And most of all, I think both PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford are just solid players coming from teams that had gotten used to losing games, so I'm happy for those guys, the fact that they're able to come in, contribute to a team that has legit playoff hopes and looks to get out of that play in conversation in this latter part of the season. That's going to be a great momentum boost for them individually. And I think the Dallas Mavericks will also come to benefit from both of their acquisitions. So, like I said, if only my Chicago Bulls learned to make trades like these two teams did this deadline. Oh man, but jokes aside, I'm excited to see the impact of all the players discussed in this segment and how they change their teams to what I hope is for the better. All right, two verses down, one more to go. And we're going to stick with hoops this time around to discuss a team that has a huge post All-Star break looming ahead of them. But before we get into all that, here's a friendly reminder as we're gradually getting towards that home stretch of the NBA season. The 2023-24 NBA season is here, and there's no better time to cop the flyest and authentic merch to rep your squad. If you're looking for the ultimate destination for NBA gear to rep the home team, look no further than the NBA store. With an extensive selection of authentic and high-quality products like jerseys, hats, and accessories, the NBA store has everything you need to express yourself. Word to NWA. And with an online presence, it becomes even easier to shop from anywhere in the world. Don't miss out on the latest trends and experiences. Visit the NBA store today by clicking the affiliate link in this episode's description. Hip to the Games is working in affiliation with the NBA store and will be compensated for your patronage by utilizing the link provided. I sincerely thank you for all your support. All right, welcome back to episode 80 of Hip to the Games, where we're going to talk about a team in the Western Conference that's going to have a big post All-Star break coming up. All right, you already know what time it is. We got to end with a bang for verse 3. And I felt if I'm going to bring you something hard hitting, it had to be about those Golden State Warriors because, man, have they shown flashes of the end of the dynasty. But yet in recent games, at the time of this recording, they've actually looked a bit better than before. But it's still tough because they have a lot going on. Steph Curry is still playing like an all-time talent, yet he hasn't been handling the ball as much. And as you would think, because of that, the Warriors' offense has struggled. They've struggled all season because of that. Then when you factor in Draymond missing time, right? And then Chris Paul being out with injury, their playmaking took a hit altogether. Kevon Looney got demoted to the bench. Andrew Wiggins was kind of on the trade block. And then speaking of trades, then there was young talent Jonathan Kuminga, apparently frustrated with how Coach Kerr was using him or lack thereof. And so the rumors were that he wanted out via trade. And then the cherry on top, the unfortunate decline of one of the best shooters ever, Klay Thompson. One of the most confident and streakiest guys I've ever seen in my life. And he just hasn't necessarily been that guy this year. If you look at his numbers, they're pretty much on par to his second season in the NBA. It's been a while since Klay Thompson has, been that, for lack of a better term, low of a player. And because of his injuries, he hasn't been as elite on defense as he used to be. And he's actually got career lows in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. It's funny enough for Klay Thompson, his 37% 3-point percentage is actually decent for an average player, but for him that's mediocre, right? Like that for him that's a decline. Um, and it's hard to see that. It's tough to see that from the same guy that once scored 60 on just 11 dribbles. We know how hot Klay can get in games. We've seen him explode for 30, 40 points, looking like his regular self. I like Klay. I'm a big fan of him. You just feel for a guy like him who comes off as fearless and he never runs out of self-belief. You can't help but root for a guy like that. But man, has it looked rough out there for him and the entire Golden State Warriors roster. He's had his bright spots, but like I said, it just hasn't been to the level of the consistency that we've seen in his game. And the combination of all these flaws and all these negative things going on, put the Warriors towards the bottom of the conference most of the year, and not necessarily where everybody thought they'd be. Again, when we make our preseason predictions and we go on the podcast and we go on the TV, and the analysts get on NBA TV, ESPN, and oh, you can't count out the you can't count out the champs, you can't count out Golden State. And then it's like, dang, like it's really looking like the end of the dynasty here. And like I said, it's not really where they thought they'd be, and it's not really where fans thought they'd be. But in the recent days, however, things seem to be getting a little bit better. They're hovering around 500. They'll be looking to use those last months of the season to at least snatch a ninth or 10th spot in the play-in, to hopefully earn a spot in the actual playoff bracket. But it's going to take some real consistency to get that done. And I'm not, I haven't always been able to catch the Warrior games, and I'm not close to the team like that, of course. But just as an NBA fan and everything like that, how we do on H2DG, I'm going to give my version at least of what I'm seeing as some positive spots and two key things that I think are very subtly helping the Warriors out right now, aside from Draymond Green being back in rotation. All right. Like I said, so on the bright side, there are two things I've noticed out of Golden State since they've been winning as of late. Number one, Jonathan Kuminga is getting the ball more. And number two, rookie Brandon Pajemski has carried much of what they missed out of a guy like Andre Iguodala. All right. So stay with me on that one. I know some people may not feel me on that. Some people may feel me on that, but some of you, you might not feel me on that, but just wait. I'll get into it. All right. So let's get into it. First off, Steve Kerr finally came to his senses. All right. We got to clap it up for Steve Kerr because he finally came to his senses and played the young man, Jonathan Kuminga. Wow. Maybe I should involve that top 10 pick I drafted a couple years ago. Or was he lottery? I can't remember. But maybe I should involve that draft pick that came out the G League, right? NBA body, super athletic. Maybe I should play him a little more. Everybody around the league sees his potential. So maybe I should work him into the offense more, whether it's through cuts or dribble handoffs, maybe, how about this? Maybe I should give him more minutes and make him feel confident to contribute for me. right? Clearly, Jonathan Kaminga's increased role in the offense has gone well for the Warriors. One of the worst things a coach can do is waste the potential of a young player simply because he refuses to let him go to work. It's unfortunate that it had to get this bad for Steve Kerr to finally say, man, let me play the young fella. But hey, better late than never, I guess. As the Warriors still kind of look like they can make a late season push. This dude Kaminga, he's great in transition. You just see his comfort level making a drastic increase. Now that he's officially part of the starting five, now you can just see it. It's not something you can really explain or calculate, right? Like you can just see he's got that bounce in his step. He's got that confidence flowing. When he gets a dunk, he knows where to cut when Steph Curry gets the ball at the top of the key, or he knows what move to make when Draymond catches the ball off a short roll. Like this dude just knows where he needs to be. He knows the right cut to make, the right move to make. He's not afraid, right? He's not overly deferring to Steph Curry or Clay or even Draymond, right? He's not afraid to take the ball up 94 feet and get an and one or a rim shattering dunk that's going to make the crowd explode and give that team momentum. He's really in his confidence, in his rhythm of confidence right now. And I was watching highlights from the Suns game, where Steph hit the game winner. And man, he was just bulldozing through the lane as if there were no defenders there. I'm talking if it was they could have had Beal, what I'm saying? That's mouse in the house. Even a guy like KD, I mean, he going to the chest, right? Nurk, he going straight to the chest, right? Like his youthful explosiveness is something I think this team needed as they have a very veteran team, right? Like you need those young guys to kind of balance that out and give you energy, right? Can make big plays to even give the older guys energy. But that's really what comes to mind as I watch Jonathan Kaminga play: energy and comfort. Knowing he's a full-time starter has increased his confidence, like I said. And when he gets the ball, he's almost always looking to score. That's what I love. He's almost always looking to score. That dude just doesn't see defenders. He just seems to always be looking towards the rim, and that dribble penetration usually works in his favor. But he also serves as a good lob threat due to his athleticism. Again, I think something Draymond appreciates, as he loves to come off those short rolls and lob it to the guy in the dunker spot, or a guy that cuts baseline. And don't let his athleticism fool you either. While although rare, he is capable of hitting mid-range shots and open threes. He still needs to work on the consistency when it comes to shooting, as most of his points do come from slashing or even self post-ups. But he really is a nice, athletic, old school forward. That the Warriors are seeing a lot of productive play from, and it's benefited them greatly. I think his aggressiveness has benefited them greatly. That's a guy that I would love to see just keep the foot on the gas and do what he does. Like I said, it's a great sign. If you're a Warrior fan, you gotta love what you're seeing, because it's a great sign that when he gets the ball, he's not afraid to post up his matchup. Like, usually it can be easy to play on a team like Golden State, who's won championships, who has Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame coach, right? Great organization. It's easy to kind of sit back and be scared, right? Oh, I can't play my game. I got to give it to Steph Curry. I got to make sure Clay's shooting, right? Clay's going to get mad if he doesn't get enough touches. Or, Draymond, man, he's like our de facto point guard. I got to give him the ball, so let me just defer to everybody else. But no, 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 no. Jonathan Kaminga has none of that in him right now, and it's helped the Warriors tremendously. So I really think that has been a big key to the Warriors' turnaround a little bit as of late, and what I think will continue to be a major key as they try to seek that playoff spot. Now, secondly, I think the connector that Brandon Podziemski has become is reminiscent of what guys like Andre Iguodala and even the lone year Dante DiVincenzo was there. The same way those guys were connectors for the Warriors, I think is the same way Brandon Podziemski has been this season. It's funny, the other day I saw that clip of the media asking Steph Curry, like, what do you think about Brandon calling his role with the team one that was very similar to Draymond Green? And Steph kind of laughed it off, like, oh, that's just my little brother talking, right? He kind of did that kind of thing. But the thing is, Brandon Pajemski, he may have a point. Like, he's certainly been that connector. In this recent trend of wins for Golden State, he's recorded 3 double doubles. One of them was a 12.7 rebound, 14 assist performance in a blowout win versus Memphis. But even outside of that, he's had his share of games hovering around 10 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, right? That was the exact same player Andre Iguodala was, an all-around guy. I'm not going to score that much, but hey, I can make the right pass. I can get an offensive rebound. I can get rebounds outside of my position. I can make the right play. I'm here to make y'all's job easier. Let me be that glue guy, that connector. And again, when you build your roster off guys like that, you're gonna want to keep that. Especially Golden State, they've kind of kept that same formula, right? Especially as you keep Draymond, Clay, and Steph, you want to keep the same roster that you had before. So I think finding really a diamond in the rough in Brandon Podziemski, and even finding the diamond of the way that he's been able to be an all-around threat, whether he starts or come off the bench, has been huge for this basketball team that thrives off ball movement and just making the right play. Um, and he may not be the defender that those guys, like I said, Dante DiVincenzo, Andre Iguodala, he may not just yet be the defender that those guys were, but he's certainly the all-around threat offensively that the Warriors have needed over the years to maintain their success. He's a guy that can make an open three. He can grab an extra rebound. Like I said, he just fits seamlessly with that Warriors ball movement. And if I'm honest, his scoring ability is certainly better than all of those Warriors I named. Andre Iguodala generally put his scoring days behind him when he joined the Warriors, averaging single digit points the whole tenure there, right? Draymond Green, he was capable, in his early years, he was knocking down threes and things of that nature, but it wasn't necessarily always his strong suit. And then Dante DiVincenzo was more of a 3-and-D threat. So I think Brandon Pajemski is different. Like, he is shown to be confident to take guys off the dribble and finish at the rim with floaters and layups. And the best part is, I think he's a guy that recognizes when his three isn't falling. And so he'll drive to the rim, he'll make a play at the rim, and even if he doesn't get a shot for himself, maybe his penetration frees up Klay Thompson in the corner. Maybe his penetration can get Steph Curry an open three. That's what you need on a team like that, man. Guys that aren't just going to stand around and wait for Steph to make a play. Guys that are going to, again, guys like Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski, who are going to take matters in their own hands and say, you know what? Let us do something. Let us create something. We're in the game for a reason. Let us help this team and be confident. And again, it's paying off. It's really paying off. Even if he hasn't touched the rock, I think he goes after offensive rebounds. He gets putbacks. Like, this is a guy who plays winning basketball, and he just doesn't seem to have an ego on that floor. Again, very reminiscent of what we saw with Andre Iguodala. In fact, I think many fans even believe that he should be starting in place of Klay Thompson because he's so active on the floor. Even when his shot isn't falling or even when he doesn't get the ball, he's active. And that's like basketball 101 right there. If you don't get the ball, make a play that's going to keep you in the game, right? Find something to do off the ball. Bring energy. Make a hustle play. Brandon Pajemski does all those things, and that's why he's been able to be successful. And I think that's why the Warriors have been able to be successful in his minutes. Again, like Jonathan Kuminga, in the midst of all those veterans on the team, it's Kuminga and Pajemski, another young piece that the Warriors are going to be. They'd be smart to keep them around, in the post-dynasty era. If this is really the end, they'd be smart to really build off what these guys can do on the court. All in all, I think if the Warriors can continue to help these two guys develop, and for the short term, keep them as key pieces, even once Chris Paul returns from injury, the Warriors might be able to have a better home stretch of the season. And at the very least, get into a position to make the playoffs before deciding what's next this offseason. So that's definitely what I'll be watching for next as the All-Star break comes to a close, to see if the Warriors can regroup and play some better basketball and indeed make the playoffs, because they certainly have the roster to at least make the play-in, but it's definitely going to take some consistency and maybe some sacrifice for some other guys to make it all work this year. So even if it's the end of a dynasty, we'll see if there's still even a little bit of magic left for the Golden State Warriors. All right, so once again, if I do say so myself, those were some pretty smooth verses today. Pretty chill verses as I ease myself back into some NBA talk. And I'm excited to get into some more as we eventually lead up to the playoffs. But you already know it's not time to go just yet, as we got one more segment. You know what time it is. It's time to reveal this week's Hip to the Games Dog of the Week. All right, and if you've been here long enough, you know that we all about being doggish on H2DG, where I like to highlight those that are relentless towards their goals and exude a confidence that supersedes any self-doubt. or doubt from haters. So I decided to consistently take a moment to acknowledge an NBA or even WNBA player who is hooping and showing what it means to be doggish. And it's been some weeks since the last one, which was Tyrese Halliburton. So I definitely want to give some shout outs as we get into the one this week. I want to give a shout out to Terry Rozier. Before he got traded to Miami, he was going crazy in Charlotte, having the best year of his career, with LaMelo sidelined with injury. And if I'm being hunted with you right now, at that point in time, I would have considered him to be an all-star over Damian Lillard. I would have started Trae Young and then would have had Maxey, Brunson, Mitchell all coming off the bench. Or maybe I would have went like Trae, Brunson, and like Maxey and Mitchell. I don't know. There's a lot of combinations you can do. But my point is that those guys would have been in the all-star game. Uh, and then it would have been nice to see a guy like Scary Terry get in there because, his numbers were up there with the best guards in the East. And, I really think that, again, it kind of it gets masked a little bit because he's playing for Charlotte, right? And obviously we want to see our superstars in the All-Star game, right? So no, it's no hate towards Damian Lillard whatsoever. I love Dame Lillard, but I just feel like it's cool to show love to guys that are balling, no matter what team or what situation they're on. And Terry Rozier was up there for a little bit. And I also want to give a shout out to Scotty Barnes, because he's really having a bounce back year from that sophomore slump he kind of had last year. But again, people ain't going to show love because, I don't know if it's because he's in Toronto or what, but I'm glad Adam Silver selected him to replace Julius Randle in the All-Star game because he definitely deserved it. He definitely deserved it. Those who've been paying attention have noticed that Scotty, he's been playing like an all-star all year. He's getting those double doubles. He continues to be a nice facilitator for that team. And, something I really like is that his steals and blocks have increased, while his fouls have decreased. Right. So he's getting more steals and more blocks and he's fouling less. That's a great formula for a great defender, right? Defenders know how to play defense without fouling, and Scotty Barnes is doing exactly that. Um, and this is a guy who I think gives great effort on defense without fouling. Like I said, one of those versatile power forwards, especially in this small ball era, kind of in that Pistons Blake Griffin, Paolo Banchero, Pascal Siakam mold, with obviously Giannis is kind of like the prototype at the top of that player makeup. But just these guys that play the four, that can play the three, might even play small ball five, but just these guys that they kind of have a little bit of Gerald Wallace defensively, right? And in terms of versatility, being able to play both the three and the four, right? A dash of Lamar Odom who could do a little bit of the same things, but definitely more like Lamar Odom in terms of comfort as a playmaker. And then the scoring confidence of a guy like Blake Griffin in his prime. So, these are some guys that I definitely wanted to shout out before we get into the real dog of the week, because there can only be one. And those guys are balling, but there's only one dog of the week. And I decided to show some love to the biggest all-star snub there was, in my opinion, DeMontis, stunting like my daddy Sabonis. All right, this is not the first time you've heard me shout out this guy on Hip to the Games. All right, big DeMontis Sabonis fan over here. I mean, you can argue that he's having a better year than last year, and maybe even a better year than his 2020-21 campaign, in which he averaged 20 points a game. But this dude is basically Nikola Jokic without the offensive dominance, without the offensive gravity, right? Like, he doesn't score as much. He's not as good of a shooter, but he gets more rebounds and almost the same amount of assists, and doing it on a pretty similar team. We see a lot of two-man actions between Murray and Jokic, and it's the same with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. It's so wild that neither of those guys, speaking of, were all-stars. And even worse, that you had ignorant fans saying that he wasn't deserving, and that couldn't have been farther from the truth. He recently had a 20-point, 26 rebound, 5 assist game and shot 10 of 11 from the field in a win at Memphis. He had a stretch of 5 triple-doubles in a 7-game span at the time of this recording. 5 triple-doubles in a 7-game span, and he's got 2 games this year with 15 assists. I mean, he's just a really skilled and very unselfish low post big, a piece that's kind of becoming a focal point on NBA rosters in this new era, right? Like, if you can get a big man who can post up, rebound, pass, as long as you have shooters and a dynamic ball handler, like, you're gonna have a good team if you have a guy like that, right? And because think about it, like, in this era of small ball and limited post play, some teams don't have big men to guard these guys one-on-one, right? So a lot of the really good low post bigs, Embiid, Jokic, Sabonis, they get doubled, right? Teams don't even want to match up with these guys unless you have an Anthony Davis or a Bam Adebayo, right? A stout defensive big. It's just an instant double team. Like if you watch these games, anytime there's a post entry pass, that's why the post entry pass is a lost art now. Guards don't even want to throw it because they know the double's coming and they don't want to get a turnover, right? Somebody's either going to pick off the pass or they're going to tip the pass or they'll get it to the big man, but then he's going to have to catch it and look for the open man, make a skip pass. You know what I'm saying? They just double team now. And I think that's why we see a lot of big men with high assist numbers and why guys like Jokic and Sabonis are putting up passing numbers that are even better than a lot of point guards in the league. Because, again, just like his pops Arvydas Sabonis, DeMontis has a great feel to read where the double's coming from and not just make a pass, but make the right pass. And, I've been a fan of his since he blew up in Indy, and he's just a great player to watch because he doesn't play with his food down low. He punishes mismatches. He sets good screens. He makes smart passes, and he has a lot of up fakes and quick finishes around the rim. He's an old school big, and it's great to see in this modern NBA. He's just as important to the Sacramento Kings as De'Aaron Fox is, and, hopefully he can get some more respect and love around the league because he's definitely an all-star caliber player, and that's why he's the latest H2DG dog of the week. All right, big love to Domantas Sabonis. But with that, we've made it to the end of another H2DG episode. From Killer Mike's triumphant Grammy night to the winners of the NBA trade deadline and the Mavericks and Knicks, a peek at the state of the Golden State Warriors post-trade deadline, and the slept-on dominance of Domantas Sabonis. All right, plenty of good things going on in hip-hop and basketball, but as always, at the end of the day, these were just my thoughts, so I want to hear from you. All right, you can tweet the show at Hip to the Games and share your thoughts on any of the topics discussed today, as I would love to hear or read your thoughts, and I thank you for listening to another episode of H2DG, all for the love of the best combo there is. All right. And as always, there's a big shout out to you for being hip to the games and tuning in to your boy. All right. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.